Hello everyone and welcome to the digestive system. So let's get started. All right, overall functions. I think we are familiar with most of these just intuitively. First things first, you have to actually ingest or take in your food. You have to be able to secrete or release different enzymes, mucus, things like that to help move the food along. You have to be able to mix it, and again, move it along, that's propulsion. Digestion, you actually have to break food down from large pieces into small pieces, and we'll talk more about mechanical and chemical digestion in a bit. After all of that, you have to actually absorb food or nutrients, so basically have it go from the lumen of the digestive tract into the bloodstream, and then any of the waste products need to be released from the body, and that's defecation. So there are two main types of digestion. The first is mechanical, the second is chemical. Mechanical is simply the physical breakdown of food into smaller pieces. This is no different than you taking a kitchen knife and chopping up a carrot into smaller pieces. That is mechanical digestion. So this is what your teeth are doing. I think that's really obvious to us. But even like when your stomach and intestines are churning and physically kind of mushing food, they're physically breaking it up. This will also be true of bile. Bile, although it is a liquid, it physically breaks up large fat pieces into smaller ones, so it's a mechanical digestion. The actual composition doesn't change, it still stays what it is. Contrasting to that is chemical digestion. So this is a series of chemical basically reactions, specifically hydrolysis reactions, meaning that a water molecule is inserted to break bonds. And this will break macromolecules or large molecules into their constituent pieces called monomers. Okay, so we are now changing the nature of these substances. So they're going from one molecule into something totally different. So it's no longer mechanical, where it's just chopped into smaller pieces. It's now actually being changed into something else. So it's chemical digestion. And that's mostly done by enzymes from saliva, the stomach, pancreas, intestines. We'll talk about different ones in the slides later on. Basically what you're getting is, as far as sugars go, polysaccharides, so poly meaning multiple saccharides, into mono or one saccharide. Proteins are turned into amino acids. Fats get converted into glycerol and fatty acids. The way that the gastrointestinal tract is layered and is innervated, there's two main types of innervation, and that's these first two. So if I can, let's see how well this pencil tool works. Let's just draw a line here between these sort of two different groups of bullet points. The myenteric plexus, this is going to be a series of nerves that are going to innervate the muscular layers. So here you can see there's a myenteric plexus here, for example. And that is innervating the muscles of the digestive tract. So basically this is what's giving the signals to those muscles to contract and either churn the food or move it along. And then there's the submucosal plexus, and you can see that right here. And that's basically going to innervate glands and tell them to secrete whatever the thing is that it needs to be secreting. Okay, so those two are sort of the two different groups. You're either going to innervate the muscles or the glands. Now, this set is just your general set of neurons. So some of these neurons categorically are motor neurons, meaning they're there for movement, right? So again, those that are particularly innervating the myenteric plexus would be considered motor neurons. There are also sensory neurons. So there are neurons there that are picking up information as to whether or not maybe you ate something that violated the 5-second rule and is now upsetting your digestive tract. Sensory neurons are going to pick up on that. They will send information to interneurons that will take that sensory information and relay it to motor neurons so that your body can take care of that potential threat. So we've all had that. So think about when you may have gotten food poisoning, for example, or been sick. You eat something, there's something in it that is not beneficial, might be toxic to your body. The sensory neurons are picking up on that. They're sending the signal, oh no, send it back out the way it came in. We do not want this going further along our digestive system, further along into our body, getting absorbed into our bloodstream. it needs to go back out, and sure enough, you're running to the toilet and throwing up, right? So that's sort of what their role is. Or the other way, they're sending signals. If it's sensed later on in the intestines, it may end up coming out the other end as diarrhea, right? But that's basically what's going on. So you have sensory neurons that are picking up information as to like the things that you have eaten, sending information to these inner neurons that are going to be this interchange between the sensory and the motor that sends signals to the motor neuron saying, okay, get it going out one way or the other. Okay, we also have innervation to our digestive tract via the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So just as a reminder, our sympathetic nervous system was our fight or flight nervous system, and parasympathetic is our rest and digest. So when you are nervous, stressed out, exerting physical activity, quite a bit of physical activity, your sympathetic nervous system is prevalent. When you're sitting, relaxing, comfortable, not particularly stressed out, your parasympathetic nervous system is active. So in order for you to digest your food and have normal motility in your digestive tract, the parasympathetic nervous system has to dominate, right? When there is a situation where you may have to either run or fight something off or just have significant levels of anxiety, it's usually your sympathetic nervous system that is active. And one of the things that this does is it actually will shunt blood away from the digestive organs toward the muscles, right? We talked about that in an earlier lecture. So that's one of the reasons why, if you're anxious, sometimes it's hard to eat, or maybe you might get upset stomach or things like that, because your digestive system's not working quite the way it should be when you're calm and at rest digest mode. Okay. Let's see. So our main parts of our digestive system are mouth, our esophagus. So mouth, obviously get food in, ingestion, esophagus. That's going to take the food from sort of our head area down into our stomach. We've got our liver and gallbladder, our pancreas. So these are all going to help with creating enzymes and bile, things like that to help digest our food. Our small intestine, and then our large intestine. And we'll talk about each one of these in greater detail. Now, one of the things I will recommend to you, because there's going to be a lot of information here, is using a drawing something like this. And it doesn't have to be beautiful or perfect, but if you can draw something like this on a large sheet of paper, or some, you can go to Walmart and get one of those big poster board kind of things, I would super highly recommend doing recreating this image. And then having taking notes next to the different body parts, kind of like this is showing you, because it will help you understand the larger story of digestion and what's going on. The unfortunate thing about PowerPoint, it is very linear, and sometimes you kind of get lost, what's happening in the mouth when you're all the way down in the intestines. So this will help kind of organize the information on a big sheet so you can see it kind of all at one time, and it may help you make connections a little bit better, especially as we're talking about how is protein being digested, how are sugars being digested, things like that. So that'd be my big recommendation on how to study for this section. Okay, onward to the mouth. So, not surprising, I think we're all familiar with that. So we've got our upper row of teeth, bottom row, so teeth in the front. These are our incisors. Then we have our cuspid or canines, premolars or bicuspids, and then molars in the back. You're familiar with the tongue. That little piece of webbing, I guess, on the underside of the tongue is called the frenulum, in this case, the lingual frenulum. That same term is used in that little webby kind of connective tissue and epithelial tissue between your gum and your bottom lip. That's simply the labial frenulum, and in this case, it's on the bottom, so just the inferior one. Again, there's one on top. That's the superior labial frenulum. Let's see some other terms. Your hard palate is just the roof of your mouth. That is, it's skin, but it's covering the bony part. Your soft palate is posterior to that. It is soft because there is no bone there. This little dangly thing in the back of your throat is called the uvula. I forget if it's Latin or Greek, but it means grape. And you'll notice this sort of double-headed arrow here in the back. That is something called the fauces. That's basically the opening at the very back of your mouth, but like as you get to the throat part. So that opening is called the fauces. Another name for your gums is gingiva. You'll notice you've got some tonsils, the palatine tonsils here on either side. And I think that's about it. You'll see some of these other terms, but you don't need to worry about those for this course. We have 3 sets of salivary glands. The largest one is going to be the parotid. It's fairly superficial on your face. It's right here by your ear. You have one on either side. You'll notice there's a duct that will take the saliva to your mouth. That makes sense. That's exactly where you want it to be. Then you have a submandibular gland down here underneath the mandible, and then one underneath the tongue, the sublingual. All of these glands will produce salivary amylase as well as lingual lipase. So salivary amylase is going to break down starches. It breaks starches down into sugar. Okay. Lingual lipase, think lipid, will break down fats. Okay, and these are both chemical digestion. Now, here's one important thing to keep in mind and to understand. Salivary amylase works in the mouth and will continue to work until it hits the acidic environment of the stomach. Okay, as soon as it hits the acid in the stomach, it will stop working. The pH in the mouth it's not exactly, but we can just consider it roughly around 7. So it's somewhat of a neutral, if not acidic pH. It's like slightly acidic. So salivary amylase works very well at that neutral to again, slightly acidic pH. Your stomach pH is somewhere around 2. Huge, huge difference. So again, enzymes are going to be will only work in very specific conditions. So amylase, this salivary amylase, only works at pHs of around 7 or close to it. Now, ironically, lingual lipase, even though it is being secreted here in the mouth and it's kind of getting mushed into the food as we chew, it actually does not work very well at a pH of 7. It actually works much better at a pH of 2. So while it is in your mouth and while it's going down your esophagus, it is inactive. Once it hits the acidic environment of the stomach, it is activated and it will start fat digestion. The other thing about these 3 salivary glands, the parotid will, let me back up. They each produce a slightly different ratio of salivary amylase and lingual lipase to mucus. In this microscope slide here, you'll see these mucus acini. Again, those are the more clear, bubbly-like clusters of cells. These serous acini are the ones that are producing the amylase and lipase. So the parotid salivary gland has the most of these serous acini compared to mucus acini. It has both, but more of these than these. Sublingual is exactly the opposite. It actually has more mucus acini than serous acini, and then submandibular is somewhere in between. All right, let's just take a quick look at our tooth structures. Don't worry about the numbering of teeth. As you get into dental hygiene school, if that is where you're going, you will learn all these. They may even have slightly different numberings depending on where you're taking the classes. Different countries actually have different numbering systems and things like that. But just be aware of the general names of your teeth. So again, you have central incisors, you have lateral incisors, you have your canine or cuspid, premolar, second premolar, or they're also called bicuspids. And then you have your molars, right? And then your third molar is also your wisdom tooth. Obviously, slightly different set for baby teeth. As we talk about teeth, their main structure, they have 3 main external areas and then 1 internal area. So there's the crown. This is basically the part that is above the gum line or above the gingiva. Right, it's covered with enamel and dentin on the inside. There is the neck, and that's basically the part that is in this area that is gingiva, but before we actually get to the bony socket. And then the rest of it is the root, and that is in the actual bony socket of your skull. Okay. The enamel is the hardest substance in our body. It is harder than bone, right? Very important to preserve it because your body does not regenerate enamel. Dentin is underneath. It is calcified connective tissue. It is more similar to the density of bone. Unfortunately, that's just not hard enough. So if you wear away your enamel, it is very easy to wear away your dentin, and then you're getting into this pulp cavity that you see here. And if you look carefully, this is where our blood vessels are and nerves are. So this is what happens when you get a cavity. Basically, the enamel is getting eroded away by bacteria. So is the dentin, and once it hits this pulp cavity, and if there's inflammation that occurs here, if bacteria get in here, that's when you end up having to have this drilled out and you have to have a root canal, right? Let's see, some other structures. Around the very outside of the root is, you'll sort of see this lighter, I don't know what color that is, beigey pink kind of area going around it. That is called the cementum. It is cement-like, cementum. So it's also bone-like. There is a periodontal ligament, which is what this little webbing is that you're seeing all along here. Basically, that periodontal ligament is what is holding the tooth in the socket. There is a foramen in the bone at the very bottom. That's called the apical foramen. That's where the blood vessels and nerves enter and leave. Let's see, some other terms you might see. So this bone is simply called alveolar bone. If you remember back to 201, these processes in both the maxilla and the mandible were called alveolar processes. All right, just for the sake of time on our videos, I'm going to stop there. If you have any questions, please let me know.